I was very excited when Hallie told me about the speaker series. I coached Hallie for several years and got to know her, and very excited that she asked me to be part of this program. I think it's wonderful. And I was all excited. And then about a week and a half ago, I realized, well, what am I going to talk about? I'm this uh, somewhat humble coach who loves working with kids, has been fortunate enough to be able to follow my passions for working with children and sort of be able to avoid what I call the four-letter word, which is really a three-letter word, a job, because I don't think with what I do, I really go to work every day. I just do what I'm passionate about and try and be my best self every day. And I've been lucky enough to be able to do that for 58 years and raise a family and do all those wonderful things. So I thought I would like to share two things that are very kind of personal to me today. And one really came from, well, let me tell you what they are, and then I'll move a little bit forward. One is about how one connection with one person, particularly a young person, can make all the difference. Can make all the difference for that person, for one person, for an organization, for a school, and we like to think broadly. By doing all that, maybe we change the world just a little bit for the better. So big, broad ideas, but making one connection can really make a difference. And the other thing I wanted to share with you today was just some ideas for sort of being able to have a career in sports and in recreation, and not have that office job that I mentioned earlier, but be able to make a living. And we can talk about some of the different ways and things to do about that. And I'll share some personal stories and anecdotes along the way. Hopefully I don't dribble on too much because it's a beautiful afternoon and I'm sure people have lots of places to go, but Hallie asked me to share a little bit. So Hallie mentioned I'm the associate director at a children's summer camp. It's a large summer camp in New Hampshire called Camp Walt Whitman, and I'm going to come back to that a little bit later, but this making a connection with one person really came from my former boss and mentor, a man named Bill Dorfman, and he always urged us to work hard, make those connections with kids, and it will make a difference. And he always said, sometimes you're going to know it makes a difference, and sometimes you never know. And we at our camp office get these wonderful letters and phone calls from parents at the end of the summer, and like, who is this child that you sent back to me who is so strong and so confident? And those are the things that we hope one of our campers get out of summer camp. But, who is this child? They're so confident. They walk taller. They want different clothes. Like they want to dress like their counselors, who are generally college age people. But, make a difference, and you never know where it will lead you. And those differences, as I said, they can be small, affect one child. About a month ago, I got a about 6 weeks ago, I had a Facebook request from an old camper of mine. I'm talking from when I was a cabin counselor. I'm into my late 50s now, so this is back to my late teens we go, and a Facebook friend request. Of course, I accepted it, and 3 days later, I get the most fabulous message from this boy. He's a man now. He was a boy then. About, hey, Dan, do you remember me? I was your camper in 1979. I'm like, of course. I'm like, once my camper, always my camper. Of course I remember you. And he goes on, I don't know if you remember, but my dad passed away right before the summer. And I'm like, I hadn't remembered that, but now that you mention it, it did. And he's like, and so he went on to tell me a little bit more and just mentioned how I was so kind. Now at the time, I look back, I think I was a 18-year-old, 17-year-old moron who had no clue what he was doing as a children or recreation camping professional. You know, I was just getting by every day and, you know, trying to be nice to kids and taking them to their activities and taking them on hikes. I didn't know. But he went on to say, you know, that it had such a positive impact on his life. And my name came up on his Facebook feed, and he's now married with 3 little kids, and was going to send them to our camp this summer and wanted me to know, you know, how excited he was to see my name and how much of a difference that it made in his life. And that was one that I never knew about, you know, from 30 years ago. I hadn't thought 40 years ago, hadn't thought about this boy, you know, it was now a man in years. And it's just kind of a really wonderful, heartwarming story. And that's one of those like small connections, right? That we make them, you don't think much of it at the time. You have no idea what you're doing affects the other person. You know, you're just trying to be nice to them and do your job and be a good person. And to get that note from him 40 years later really affected me in a really positive way. And I shared that with some of our staff as well. And we'll do that this summer when, hopefully, knock on wood, we have camp again, because we didn't this past summer. But hopefully I'll get to share that with everyone and say, you may never know. You might get one of these letters 40 years from today. And, you know, so be your best every day, because you don't know, and positive or negative, right? You're going to have an impact on these kids, and you just don't know. The other connection that I made is a much more obvious one, and has to do with my basketball coaching career. So as it said in my bio, I spent 10 years as the head coach at Weston, Connecticut High School as the girls varsity basketball coach. I took over a pretty weak program. You know, I had all these grand plans, and you know, 3 years in, I'm like, man, this is not as easy as I thought. I may not be the next Gino Auriemma or John Wooden or any of these great coaches. Like, this is really hard. But I made one connection, and that connection with a young lady, young woman, made all the difference in the world. So part of my plan was to get involved with the youth program, which I did, and I coached the 7th grade team that very first year. And I met this young woman named Taylor. I asked her, Taylor Kennedy, I asked her if I could use her name. She said, sure. She's now a recent college graduate. But anyway, and I met this skinny blonde girl named Taylor, and, you know, she was one of 3 point guards we had on the 7th grade basketball team. And honestly, maybe the weakest of those 3, but she was just, you know, another kid. But, you know, I saw something in her, a desire to get better, and someone who loved the game. And she was the only one that year who, when I made my offer, as I always do, hey, if you want to come early, you want to stay late, I'll work with you, I'll help you. And Taylor would stay late after every practice. She would just tell her mom to pick her up like 20 minutes later, and we would just one-on-one work and shoot and chat and talk, and we bonded. You know, most kids figure you come to practice, you know, you're all athletes, you come to practice, you work hard, that should be enough. But it's, you know, we know it's not always. The great ones always are gonna do a little bit more. And then I told her about this AAU Huskies program I was starting up, which Hallie played with us for several years, and lots of kids in the area. And she was excited. She was actually my first player to sign up for the Huskies. And I ended up coaching this young woman for 10 seasons. 5 with the Huskies. Yeah, it's a lot, right? We never got sick of each other, which is amazing. I always joke with her, you tired of me yet? She'd be like, nah, not yet. So we go, and so 5 years with the Huskies, the 7th grade team, and 4 years as a high school varsity player. So I coached Taylor 10 years. Still, though, our high school program was not in great shape. When Taylor was a sophomore, our team went 0-20 on the year, which is really, really hard, let me tell you. Oh, I don't wish that on anyone. My biggest rival, I don't wish that on anyone, okay? So, but that's a really hard year. But, you know, Taylor had this connection, we kept working. She recruited her friends all to come, kids who had never played basketball before, so there could be a junior varsity team. But our program was in real trouble. I mean, honestly, I almost lost my job, but she would come with me to youth clinics. She was constantly promoting the program. And after that sophomore year, we went 0-20, things started finally to turn around. Like I said, I thought it would take 2 or 3 years. It took 5. But so we went from 0 wins. Taylor got everyone excited about it, helped me with people in town. Went to 7 wins in Taylor's senior year. I always joke with her and her classmates who she got playing. We had a group I called the Core Four, like the Yankees had their Core Four. We had our Core Four. And we ended up winning 13 games and made it to the Sweet 16 in the state tournament. And that was awesome. And I was so happy, and they were so happy. And, I told them if this was a Disney movie, we would have won the state championship. You would have thrown one in at the buzzer, and we all would have jumped on you. But life isn't a Disney movie, right? So we had to be happy with that, and we were. And the connection part really continued because bonding with Taylor and having her on board, promoting what we were doing and making a difference and being so positive in town, even when we were 0-20 and kids didn't want to play, was really positive. And Taylor's senior year, she helped me mentor someone that Hallie knows, a young woman named Katie, who was a much, much better player. I mean, obvious from the first time you saw her, here's a really talented kid. And after that 13-win year, we then won 15, 16, 18, a state semifinal, and 15. And saw success in a way that no one thought possible. I didn't even think was possible when we were 0-20 a few years before that. And just as importantly, just when I'm proud of the story, is not only did our team get better, our varsity team, but we went from 14 kids in the program to 25. We added a freshman team. So this whole thing grew, in my mind, it became successful because of that one connection. If that hadn't happened, maybe 4 or 5 years in, that would have been the end of that high school basketball coaching career. Maybe I wouldn't be talking to you all today. And I really owe that, in my mind, all to that one connection that has made all the difference. And the young woman that Taylor mentored, Katie, like I said, we won 75% of our games over the 3 years after that, made a state Final Four. She's now playing at Kenyon College in Ohio. Super proud of her. And, so many good things came from that. Other kids playing in college, other kids in town excited about the game, all from that one thing. And so I urge you, make connections. Nothing is stronger through athletics and through sports than the personal connections we make. And in my mind, right, like it's less important what we play and what we coach and what we're doing than that we're doing something. Because I know, and the same stories happen in the arts, and they happen, in theater and in music and in things that have nothing to do with athletics. That's kind of our conduit to connecting with young people and to making lifelong connections and to doing all those positive things. So I urge you, make those connections, both as a mentee and a mentor when you have that opportunity. For me, obviously, 2 very different kind of stories has made a huge difference in a lot of people's lives, and just something that I thought was really important to share with you, that kind of story and that arc of what happened in my career. Anyone have any questions or comments before I move on? Okay, I didn't think so. But on this one, we move on. It would be great if we got some participation here rather than just me chatting about it. But I wanted to take some other thing and some time and talk about careers, jobs, and career opportunities in athletics, in recreation, in sports. I think some of them are really, really obvious, and there are probably others that maybe you hadn't thought of. We all, I assume you're on here, you love sports, you're athletes, you love it. It's been a big part of your lives. And for some of you, either now or at some point in the near future, you may be saying, how can I stay involved? Can I make a career out of this? Can I avoid that 4-letter word that has 3 letters, the job? Not that there's anything wrong with that. Trust me, many jobs are very rewarding, but I don't mean to say it that way. But I wanted to look at some opportunities and see if some ideas. So I think that it's really important. There are some obvious ones. I don't know if anyone wants to raise their hand or type into the chat, what some of them might be. I mean, I'll get the ball rolling. Some obvious ones of how to stay involved in sports. One is to be a professional athlete, right? That's the most obvious one. And yeah, Allie? Yeah.
Oh yeah, I guess I was just thinking like along with being like a player, you could also be a coach or an assistant coach, I guess is kind of the immediate ones, but maybe even I know that there's a lot of behind the scenes action for like being a team manager or even like, I don't know, certain like developmental programs and camps and stuff like that. You can kind of work in almost the more business side too.
Absolutely. So athlete, we've got a coach, whether it's assistant or head coach. Strength and conditioning is a big thing. I have a former player from years ago who is a college strength and conditioning coach and makes a nice living. Makes, somewhere generally Division I, $75,000 to $150,000, which is pretty good money. And so that's his role. He's the strength and conditioning coach and worked his way up from smaller schools to bigger schools and is now at, I'll think of it, Loyola in Maryland, which is a smaller but Division I school, and he works with lacrosse. They have a very good lacrosse program, basketball players, works with all the athletes at that school. Behind the scenes, there's a lot more. So, I mean, some of the obvious ones that are up front and people might think of to me are announcers, right? We see the guys on TV. Yeah, that'd be cool. I can do that. I know a lot about baseball. How about Mamadou? Did I pronounce it right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. What did you have in mind?
Well, my dream is to someday work at ESPN.
I was going to get to that, but let's talk about that. That's great. Are you thinking on the production side or in front of the camera?
In front of the camera.
In front of the camera. So you want to be that announcer. That's awesome. Those jobs obviously are tougher to come by, right? So you gotta work hard ahead of you and get involved in school. I know a little bit about that. I have a friend who started as a PA at ESPN and is now a producer of some of their shows. We can chat more if you'd like to, but obviously you need a good plan for that. If you're, there's lots of people, I think, thinking about. My son went to a smaller school, Stony Brook on Long Island, and he's actually on the production side. So Brett, my son, who's in his late 20s, is a graphic artist. So he's been able to stay involved in sports through his work at Bleacher Report website, which you probably know. He works at Bleacher Report, has been there 4 years now, and works on lots of different shows and with different people. But the cool thing about him being at a smaller school is he actually, at 20 years old, was producing Division I sports streaming. And other people were announcing, and they produced shows for the athletic department. And we have other friends who have gone to schools, like the obvious one might be like a Syracuse, right? Like really well known for their journalism and sports announcing. Marv Albert, lots of guys went there. But there, you might be lucky if you could, announce the volleyball or, some of the maybe less glamorous sports. If at all. So there's trade-offs there, and I'd be happy to chat further with you you have any interest in that, but that's really, lots of things in production. You got the announcers in front, you've got your cameraman, you've got your director, right, and producer, people who are making the switches. My son did some of that in college, and now he's on the graphic art side where he's, helping produce both like some of they have cartoon shows on Bleacher Report. They have all kinds of things going on. There always need for production assistants, which is a PA, which is a great way to get started in that field. And I know a lot of young people do that. Any other ideas? There's lots of others. So some other things that may be less obvious, but still stay involved in sports is facilities management. Is a growing field. So not only do golf courses need supervisors and greenskeepers and people managing all that, every facility you see, both professionally and college, have facilities people who are responsible for everything that happens there. So when you go to Madison Square Garden to see a Knick game, that doesn't all happen by accident, right? Someone's got to be in charge of everything from tickets to marketing to making sure that the guys are changing the floor from basketball to hockey to the circus set up to, Billy Joel has a concert and 9 million other things. It really, there's a lot going on there. Facility management at colleges. I helped out at a tennis camp at Fairfield U. They had all kinds of people helping with their facilities there. So that's one other. Another I mentioned before, marketing, which would involve obviously business, perhaps a business school, but there's lots of sports marketing going on right now, not only for teams, but tie-in between teams and Coke, Pepsi, beer companies, everything you see when, you turn NASCAR on the TV and you see all those ads all over the cars. Someone has to negotiate those deals, right? So that's possibly another. Public relations in a similar way to marketing. I know a young woman who used to work who works for the Denver Broncos. She gets to interact with John Elway, the famous quarterback who helps run the Broncos now almost every day. And she started out as like a community liaison type person and has moved up her way. She's not deciding yet, on who they're going to draft, but she's involved in all kinds of things with the Broncos, which is really kind of cool. She gets to go to the games, bring friends, family, but they have community events she organizes. They meet with, they're big ticket people who buy lots of tickets, corporate sponsors, all those kinds of things she's really involved in. I have another friend who is who manages athletes, right? Who negotiates the contracts, who figures out who's going to be sponsored by whom. Athlete management is a big way to stay involved in sports. And then there's other things, obviously. I don't know if any of you were on the call with Annie Toto, but Annie works for sportsography, which helps use sports and concepts to help students with their math and other things. If you were on it, I'm sure it was a great talk because Annie's awesome. I know how we both think the same. Recreation departments, right? Every town, you don't really think about it. Every town has a recreation department. Every city, they're varying sizes. Sometimes it's by county, but I've worked with a lot of people through our camp over the years who have left us and gone on to become assistant directors of recreation departments. They're involved with sports. They're sometimes doing some coaching or running town sports camps, doing various things throughout. And I think it's really interesting. My daughter has done a couple of things. I know I get to brag about my kids, but I think it's kind of cool that they both have loved sports. Obviously, it's a big part of our family life, and they're both still involved in sports and recreation. So I mentioned my son works at Bleacher Report. My daughter's in a different world. She works in the nonprofit world, And Molly has her master's degree in nonprofit management. She started out of college with a company called Boston Scholar Athlete. She lives up in the Boston area. And they assigned her first job was to go to a high school and help those student athletes with their academics. So she worked with all the small high school, Fenway High School in Boston, small high school, worked with the kids on keeping up their grades, making sure they were NCAA eligible, because you have to have certain core courses and meet certain requirements if you want to play ball in college. I think that that now she got her master's and she works with an organization called Playworks, which focuses on bringing play and movement to the classroom. So making sure kids have, and this is more younger kids, but not truly coaching, but making sure there's play and there's movement in classrooms. And she works with kids directly, but also probably just as importantly with classroom teachers on how to do it. And now, of course, their new challenge with COVID is doing that virtually. So they've had to really be on their toes and kind of moving things along in that direction. And the last thing I want to talk to that's very near and dear to my heart is summer camp, or camps in general. It's probably a lot bigger business than many of you know. There are 12,000 camps in the United States, roughly. Many were not open this summer. Only about 35% were open, and most of those were day camps in communities that were less hard hit early on than those of us in the Northeast. My camp is in New Hampshire. There was only one sleepaway camp that opened in New Hampshire this summer. Fortunately, they operated safely, and we're going to learn a lot from them. We didn't feel we could operate safely this summer and didn't open. But there's 12,000 camps in the U.S., employs over 1 million people. The American Camp Association is our accrediting organization, which is a terrific organization that also hires staff every year, and I have friends who work for them. And camps come in all shapes and sizes, private, for-profit, nonprofit, religious. There's organizations, obviously, like the Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts and all the other things you might think about. There's day camps, there's residential camps, there's camps that are kind of in between, which are overnight for 5 days, and then kids come home on the weekends. So there's all kinds of things. There's travel camps and teen travel programs, all those kinds of things is all part of falls under ours. And camps can be about so many different things. You can have general program camps like mine is, which kids do everything from swim and boat to play sports to hike and camp and bike and do the arts and theater. So I'll stop with my advertisement right now, but there's more specialized camps for sports, obviously, for drama, for theater, for health, almost anything you can think of, computer science, space camp, you can think of it. Someone probably already has. Maybe they haven't, though. Maybe you have a great idea to start one there. I'll come be your executive director. But you know, they can be almost any form, and there's many roles, both working directly and indirectly with kids. Obviously, we need our counselors, we need our coaches, but we also have facilities management in a camp, fundraising, business. The camp world has kind of grown up in the last 10 or 15 years in terms of using more modern, good business practices. I spent 3 years working at my camp in the summer, but working full-time. We're part of a larger organization. It's actually the largest in the country of private for-profit camps, where I did purchasing for 17 camps. So I bought thousands of baseballs, and I rented hundreds of buses and rented hundreds of cars for the different camps and vehicles, and it was really an interesting time, and I learned a lot. And so that's a job like one would never think of, and I certainly didn't, but you know, they came to me and said, would you do this? And you know, it was a really interesting 3 years. There are hundreds, or really thousands, of full-time and part-time jobs every year in the camping industry. So obviously working a summer in high school or college is a great place to start to see if that might be for you. You know, lots of camps hire high school kids. Our camp only hires after they've had 1 year in college, but that will vary greatly by the type of camp and budgets and all kinds of things that we can't control. But that's one that maybe people didn't think of, that, you know, you could stay in the world of recreation and sports and be active and make a career of it. And if anyone is interested in finding out more or talking about that, you know, I'm going to type in my email right now, if that's okay. If anyone wants to, okay. This is probably different than the one you have, but this is my camp one. Dan@campwalt.com. We're Camp Walt Whitman in New Hampshire. And so I've been fortunate enough to be able to, between coaching really 3 seasons and a lot in the winter, coaching tennis in the spring, basketball, fall and winter with several different teams, I've been able to be lucky enough to make a living combining that with my camp work, which is part-time in the summer and then very full-time, like 100 hours a week coaching in the winter and working like 100 hours a week at my camp in the summer as the associate director. But I've been lucky enough to be able to raise my family and have a career and buy a house and, you know, do all those kinds of wonderful things that we hope to be able to do, raise a family as adults. And that's kind of my story and what I wanted to share with you all today. Does anyone have any questions, comments?
Yeah, I think I have kind of a few questions that came to mind as you were speaking. So I guess the first one, more generally about just kind of, you know, you talked about just kind of creating your own opportunities and kind of that's kind of how you stay in the athletic scene and stuff like that. So I was wondering if you think like these opportunities mostly just come from being consistent and staying in kind of the athletic world and making connections with others, or are there other steps to take to kind of push you into that kind of career criteria?
It's a great question. I think, you know, the personal contacts are always great, that the people you work with, you know, are going to be your biggest advocates, assuming you do a good job and you work really hard, connect with them, that they're going to be your advocates in life. And this is just not in sports careers. This is, you know, in my experience, this is with everything, that those personal connections are the best. But in a lot of ways, I feel like it's much easier to go out and seek what you want today. Things that we didn't have, you know, I'm going to sound like an old fart now, but back in the day, right, you know, if I wanted a career in camping, there was a magazine that came out, you know, 10 times a year, once a month in the winter months, the non-summer months. And there were a few job listings in there for camp directors. Today, I could go on right now and find 100 jobs for director, assistant director, you know, program director, full-time, part-time, summer only, you know, year round, all kinds of options. I'm on some wonderful Facebook groups where we share ideas, and one called Summer Camp Professionals. That's great. It's people from all over the country, all over the world, you know, sharing and giving. And sometimes they do mention that they're looking for a, you know, a program director, sort of an entry-level year-round job. They're looking for a fundraising person, haven't found the right person yet, and they connect. And I do feel like, you know, it's easier today to reach out or to seek out what you really want.
Gotcha. No, that's super helpful. And I guess kind of to that end about kind of figuring out what path to go down and what kind of career you want to kind of go after and pursue. Would you say that it's kind of just kind of about like trial and error and communicating with others, or are there other ways that kind of people go about trying to specify kind of what job or I know you don't like that word, but kind
No,
of
it's okay.
road you want to pursue and stuff like that?
Um, you know, I think that trial and error is great, and I think that it's important that you get practical experience. I'm not a big fan of one of the big trends in business today of unpaid internships. That's sort of a personal pet peeve I have. I don't like unpaid internships. I believe people deserve to be paid, even a small amount for work that they do. But I mean, it does have its place, obviously, in getting people connected and seeing how different businesses operate. So I wouldn't tell people not to do them. I would just be like, don't do it for 2 years, right? And I think that you do have to reach out, work lots of different places, work for and with different kinds of people, see the kind of organization, the kind of business that you want to be in, because you can have two identical businesses, organizations, and the culture in each of them can be completely different. And you want to look for one that's going, as a young person, that's going to help you grow, that's going to, even if not put you in charge of lots of different things, expose you to lots of different areas within that business, that you're going to meet lots of people. When your boss meets with clients, are you coming along, or are you back in the office doing their paperwork all the time? Sometimes it needs to be done. We all understand that. But to me, that's really important. What is the culture? Are they going to help? How is this organization going to help you grow while you help them be successful? It's got to be a two-way street.
Gotcha. That makes total sense. And that's really helpful.
Good.
And then I think I have one more question, but if anyone else has any questions, feel free to raise your hand or just honestly cut me off. But I was wondering, this kind of goes back to what you were talking about before, more about kind of team cultures and stuff like that. I was wondering, how do you think you can really maintain a strong kind of team culture with, like ambition and motivation from all the players and stuff, but like more specifically with COVID right now, because I know that's been a big obstacle for a lot of teams lately, including mine.
Excuse me. Yeah, a big obstacle. I think as a leader, whether you're the coach, or a captain or a team leader, or even in an unofficial capacity, I think it's really important to, try to stay not just connected, but engaged with your team, with your group. That a lot of contact is really helpful, but trying to find ways, and we're working on this right now with our summer camp community, right? We didn't open last year, so we're working really hard. At the beginning, it was like, okay, well, we're going to have a virtual campfire, and our song leader sang some songs and someone told a story, and that was fine. But now we're finding that's not really just enough anymore. So now we spent some time this weekend, actually, now that you mention it, we spent some time brainstorming how to engage. So now we're working on things like doing a scavenger hunt by cabin and giving a prize this summer to those who, to that cabin who won the scavenger hunt, or go find things, or setting world records, minute to win it kind of things. And this is what summer camp people do. I think of stuff like this all day. That's why it's not a job, but those kind of things. So it's, we're working on really engaging our community versus just sort of putting something out there for them, if that makes sense. And I think with teams, that's what, is going to be the second step. My basketball team, when COVID first happened, like, hey guys, we got to stay involved. And I would send them workout information and videos. And that was great. And then I could sort of feel like the response dwindling as the weeks went on. And now it's going to be like, okay, get your phone out and we're going to do this together now. We're going to do this workout together. Or we're going to have this contest of who, all right, send me your mile time. Whoever finishes the best will have this little reward for you, or you can lead this or decide this. And having a little bit of some competition involved, because athletes are competitive and like competing. So I think that's kind of the difference. Did I answer your question? I think so.
No, absolutely. Sure. No, that's super helpful, and I know it's hard for every community right now to kind of maintain that positive thinking and that engagement right now. And it sounds like you've been doing a great job with that.
We're trying.
Yeah, yeah, I get that. So I think that especially is a lot of trial and error, and definitely something to always kind of figure out. But I think everyone has been doing a pretty good job, especially under the circumstances. Well, thank you all so much for being here, and a big thank you to Coach Dan for being here, and speaking about just all of his experiences and giving really great, I think, advice, both life advice and also kind of specific to athletics as well, that I know will all be able to kind of take us forward. So I really appreciate that. Thank you all so much for joining us today. And I think that's it from me. Thank you all so much for being here.
Thanks, Hallie.
All right. See you guys later. Bye.